Okay, let me turn now to your book called Broken Money. And I'm going to read a little bit, Lynn, from the introduction, and then we'll to have more of a conversation about it. But I really loved your intro here. So right off the bat, she says, the first line of the introduction, in September 2022, a wave of normal people robbed banks in Lebanon. In case folks don't what was she talking about? This was like some people on the right kind of passed that around, and then I never saw much discussion of it. But it was because in Lebanon, the banks were not letting people get access to their money. Some quote regular people literally started robbing banks, some with fake weapons and others with real ones, not to take other people's money, but to say, give me my money. I need to go, like some people, you document a case here, Lynn, of someone whose relative was in the hospital and they needed their money, but the bank said, sorry, we're closed right now. And so some people were doing that. And then you just start going through listing all of the massive price inflation, either hyper or just very high rates of price inflation hitting certain countries. Then you say, from 2016 to 2021, many sovereign bond markets in wealthy nations across Europe and Japan were offering near zero or even negative nominal yields, and there was over $18 trillion worth of negative yielding bonds at the peak. People had to pay for the privilege of lending to governments and to large corporations rather than receiving interest for doing so, right? So that's really weird. And before that happened, some economists would have said that was literally impossible, because why would you lend at a negative nominal rate? You could just sit on cash, and yet, there's reasons that didn't occur. You mentioned that Powell was wrong in early 2021, was testifying about whether price inflation might rise because of the stuff they had done during the Corona panic, and he said no, and that we may have to unlearn the idea that monetary aggregates have an important impact on the economy. So that, of course, turned out to be a foolish thing to say. And then I'll read one more paragraph here, Lynn, and then we'll let you respond. So again, folks, this is from her introduction to her book, Broken Money. There are approximately 160 different currencies in the world, each with a local monopoly over their own jurisdiction, and most of them have little or no acceptance outside of that jurisdiction. The global financial order is practically a barter system in this regard. A handful of top currencies are held as reserve currencies by other central banks, but they lose value slowly over time. Most of the other currencies are more prone to sharp devaluations, persistent periods of double-digit inflation, and occasional hyperinflations, while enjoying little or no foreign acceptance. For people in countries that are in the second group, they often try to get their hands on foreign currencies such as dollars to protect their savings, and they can't trust their local banks to hold those dollars if they did get them. And then you wrap up and say, how did we get to this point? Why isn't our money better than this? And so that, ties into your book titled Broken Money. So I just thought that was, I was aware of all those things, but I don't know that I've ever seen someone just kind of pack them all together to just ask people, our computers are pretty good. Our space exploration is pretty cool. We're always making improvements in transportation and nutrition and blah, 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 agricultural yields. You would think at this point, the world's money would operate better, and yet it's awful. And so
Yeah, and I think a lot of us in developed countries are kind of buffered from that fact.
Mm-hmm.
We have enough problems here with money, but when you look globally, it's even worse. It is shockingly bad how the money system works globally. And the reason I had that intro was that most of the book is pretty chronological in the sense that we go from hunter-gatherer money to basically Bitcoin and kind of the whole gamut. And that could be dry. And so it starts out by saying, okay, it's relatable. What's the actual problem here? Before we get into the treatise on what is money at its foundation and the more theoretical exercises and the practical examples, let's actually bring this back to the human condition, how it impacts our lives. And so when you visualize a young woman robbing a bank in Lebanon to get her own deposits out for her cancer-stricken sister, that kind of brings home, why is it like that? Why is this a thing? Why does a doctor, a physician in Egypt stack paper dollar bills with no interest in his apartment because it's better than most of his other saving options? And it just shows that in the kind of the global sense, money is so siloed. So for example, if you're born outside of any of the top 10 currency blocks, you're probably in an environment where money supply is going up by 15, 20% per year, maybe more in some cases. And so you're in this kind of currency matrix where It's hard to envision things that are different. You know that your money system is not good, but it's not only your savings hard to keep up with, you have to negotiate a higher wage like constantly every year to keep up with that dilution that's happening. And if you invest in capital markets, you're usually very constrained. Usually those environments, people just say, well, just buy the S&P 500 if you don't like inflation. But that's not so easy in a lot of countries. Their own domestic equity markets are usually not the, up and to the right that we're used to in the United States, for example, which even then could be taken for granted. And so the combination of not having good savings assets and having to like renegotiate contracts, small business things, big business things, wages, that frequently and with those big numbers is just a huge friction on people. And it's just remarkable to compare to the energy growth we've had. Like you said, almost every other thing, there's been a lot of progress, but money's been basically stuck in the 70s since the 70s.
Yeah, it's really good. And that's partly what we're trying to do here at Infineo is like I'm on a team call recently. I try to motivate people saying, we get our stuff up and running and somebody in a different country just to be able to have a dollar denominated asset that grows even at whatever 4% per year measured in US dollars, that could be life-saving to somebody whose local currency crashes, and their savings get wiped out. And like you say, we in North America, I think sometimes tend to take that's not to say that the Canadian or US system is great by any stretch. It's a lot better than because it's so awful in other places.
Hey everybody, this is Bob Murphy. Thanks for listening to this clip from the InFi podcast. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, please consider subscribing and share this video with others. We've got new episodes dropping every Friday with more insightful discussions. Stay tuned.